Hello, my name is Craig and I've been addicted to MMO gaming for nearly 15 years. Hello to the internet, my name is Craig Montgomery and we're here today to talk about the things that make you say, who even am I? And today we're going to talk about being addicted to the internet. You know, the thing that you're using to watch this video. Which, thank you, by the way. You have access to endless amounts of content and entertainment and other types of kerfuffle right at your fingertips, and you're still here, which is awesome. I appreciate that. So recently, I picked up playing Guild Wars 2 again, and I have a pretty big history with online games. It started with Final Fantasy XI when I was about 14 years old, and man, did that game rock my world. I've always been a nerd for Final Fantasy games, and when I found out they were making a game online that you could play with other people who also liked Final Fantasy, it was so new and exciting to me. This was pre-World of Warcraft, so it happened before MMOs kind of hit their craze, and I, at the time, wasn't aware of RuneScape and games like that. My only foray into online gaming at that time had been StarCraft, which I'm not super into the strategy kind of battle competitiveness, so it didn't really tickle my buttons. The concept of building a character that I could play as that would interact with other people who had built characters that they had in a universe of Final Fantasy things, which I'm super about already, was just so exciting, and I was not prepared for how addictive it would be. Teenage years are difficult for all of us. Puberty, social anxiety, lack of autonomy as our responsibilities start escalating at a pace like never before. And in my case, I was struggling with my sexuality, I was wrestling with major depression, the diagnosed kind, not the Craig just being dramatic kind. So when I experienced the transference of identity that happens when you play an online game, it was like the perfect storm for me to be addicted AF. It alleviated so much of my suffering just by being able to distract me from the problems that I was dealing with in my real life. My little avatar was a piece of identity that I actually had some control over. I could use it to make friends with people who liked doing the same things as me, and the game had this built-in, very effective sense of achievement that made me feel like I was still being productive. I was hooked immediately. I spent all of my spare time playing the game and every single second of my day thinking about playing the game, which meant that everything else felt like it was getting in the way of me doing what I really wanted to do, which was play Final Fantasy XI. School, work, family, even hanging out with friends in, real life situations felt like an obligation. If I spent what felt like too much time doing something else, I would have this anger and frustration just rage inside of my body because I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. It was a very strong emotional response, and it was problematic for me. Because I enjoy my family and my friends. I value the time that I get to spend with them and their presence in my life. And I wanted to be present and happy when I was with them, not distracted and thinking about something that I prefer to be doing than hanging out with them. School and eventually work when I entered the workforce also became a problem, and those things are important to me because I like living up to other people's expectations of me, and I had to work because, I had to afford things. So eventually when I got so deep into a pattern of things making me angry when they stopped me from gaming, I had to do something. I tried to limit my time playing the video game and intentionally spend time with my friends and family, but even with intention, I still was so distracted in those moments and my thoughts kept getting pulled back to the fact that I'd prefer to be gaming at the time. And that's what I want to talk about today. When our thoughts get pulled to an online experience and we feel like we have no control over that magnetism. For me, that happened with online video gaming, but it can just as easily happen with something like social media, forums, or any of the other things that we use to interact with people online. There are countless platforms popping up every day trying to be the next Facebook. But whether we're pinning, posting, tumbling, tweeting, snapping, it doesn't matter. The act is all the same. We're filtering our life into a digital space and sharing that with other people. And I'm going to sidestep the conversation of whether I think that's a good or a bad thing, because for this discussion, I want to stay focused on what happens when these modes of connection overtake us. And that happens when these digital platforms start to take an insidious form, which is to distract us. When life is overwhelming, it's a really common defense mechanism to engage in avoidance, which means to physically or psychologically distance yourself from a situation in order to not feel the emotions that it brings up in you. As we become more and more entangled with our digital way of interacting, I feel like it's becoming incredibly difficult to recognize the line we cross when we move from a casual relationship with our online tools to a dependent one. And that puts us at risk of tying some of our self-worth to how many shares or likes that we get. Or in my case, the prettiest or strongest piece of gear I can get my imaginary little hands on. In that space, we're placing an enormous amount of value on something that we have absolutely no control over. And the things that we consider valuable take up the most real estate in our minds. So as this experience falls out of balance, we risk valuing digital interactions over real-life interactions. And that's going to make our brain communicate to us that we're not spending our time efficiently, and that creates frustration. Because it's much quicker to post an Instagram photo and collect a couple dozen likes than it is to set up a hangout session with a friend and catch up over a conversation. For me, it's easier to level up my character than it is to take a writing class or put myself into a new situation to try and make a new friend. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't spend time online, I just think it takes a sense of balance to maintain our emotional health. So where do we look if we find the balance slipping? Inside, of course. The hardest place to look. For me, I had some pretty obvious issues that were right in front of my face that I just didn't want to deal with. And I had this urgency inside of my body to avoid the pain and discomfort that came from looking at the problems that I had in my real life. So I obviously had to create a whole new identity in an online game that basically simulates life in a different world, and then spend an obscene amount of time poking away at a keyboard to move my pixelated body around a mythical landscape to beat up fantastical creatures and collect fake items to simulate the sense of achievement that I so desperately craved. Obviously, I had no other options. Eventually, the anger issues that I was experiencing drove me to cut the internet cord cold turkey. I had to get off the sauce because it was just causing me too many issues. And I woke up to all of those problems exactly where I left them, between myself and everything I wanted out of life. So I had to buckle down and start doing the work. And that's really when I started trying to figure out all the things that I talk about on this channel. It was confusing and hard and slow. And that's really why I try to present all these things to you guys. The work is always ours to do, but there's no reason for us to not seek guidance from each other. So if my experience can help even one person navigate their way through a path to some relief, that's probably the greatest thing that I can do with my time on this little blue rock. So if you find yourself obsessively monitoring your likes on Snapstagram, or your whole day is ruined because your passionate blog post isn't finding any traction on the Book of Tumbles, it might be time to ask yourself, am I addicted to the internet? The answer is always yes. We all are. And that's okay. We just need to make sure that we're taking care of our emotional health so we have the resiliency to deal with the digital punches. With that being said, I can report that now that I'm taking better care of myself, I can happily game and live my actual life with a nice sense of balance. I might occasionally overvalue a pretty staff, but being comfortable in my own skin has made it so much easier to stay present in my non-digital life. And that's what I'm going to turn the question to you. What has your experience online been like? I think it's really easy for us to take online space for granted. This is still an incredibly new technology for how much time that we spend on it. I'm a baby, and I was born before the internet. Like, significantly before. Leave a comment and let me know your thoughts. Like the video if you liked it, and please subscribe to my channel. I release videos every Tuesday and they come to you that way, which is fun. And as always, take care of yourself. Okay, bye.